Here we are again, closing out another year in Chicago. So there's only one thing left to do, and that's to look back on the good, the bad, and just plain weird things that happened in Chicago this year. The year kicks off with Amazon hype overflowing from last year as Chicago makes the top 20 finalists for the new headquarters. Cities vying for Amazon's attention were going all in.
And we're all in for Amazon.
It's Chicago.
A couple named their baby Chicago after the father's apparent fondness for the city, and the iconic rock and roll McDonald's downtown was demolished. It's being replaced by a more modern flagship store without the rock and roll memorabilia. February brought snow to Chicago as we saw 9 consecutive days of snowfall, tied with the current record on hand. Dibs, shovels and salt were in full swing as Southwest Airlines announced they ran out of de-icer and had to cancel 250 flights. Probably not the best news to receive at an airport, but it was worse for the editor of the Chicago Reader, who upon returning to O'Hare, learned that he had been fired. He was returning from his honeymoon. His replacement only lasted 10 days after he released this controversial cover. And that brings us to one of the more overarching stories of 2018. The 2018 Illinois gubernatorial election would take place on November the 6th. Bruce Rauner was seeking re-election and J.B. Pritzker wanted to unseat him. The two billionaires spent a combined $207 million on their campaign. Flyers, TV ads, Spotify ads, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You really had to be living under a rock to avoid this one. In the end, J.B. Pritzker won and will become the 43rd governor of Illinois. Back to February, where we also had the launch of Block Hub Chicago, the neighboring news organization which launched after a successful Kickstarter campaign aimed to fill the shoes of the recently departed DNA Info. Also departing Chicago was the John Hancock Center. Not the building, just the name. It's now officially known as 875 North Michigan Avenue. Although, as is a tradition in Chicago, we will still be calling it the John Hancock Center, like Sears Tower and Comiskey Park. You know, it probably makes financial sense for companies after 30 years to stop leasing the building naming rights. Because here in Chicago, we're not going to call it by anything else. It was March Madness here in Chicago with the Loyola men's basketball team making it to the Final Four of the NCAA. Although they didn't advance to the final, their 98-year-old team chaplain, Sister Jean, became a national star and her merch was selling like hotcakes. Speaking of unexpected stars, the Chicago Blackhawks had to call up the emergency goalie when playing Winnipeg. Scott Foster, a 36-year-old accountant, had to play the final 14 minutes of regulation as both Blackhawks goalies on hand were injured. He stopped the 7 shots on goal he faced, which helped the team keep their commanding lead and win the game 6-2. Houston got its own bean, Cloud Column by Anish Kapoor, which is the same artist behind Cloudgate in Chicago, or The Bean. This led to the best newspaper banter of the year between the Chicago Tribune and Houston Chronicle. I usually don't tell the newspaper what I want, but I want more of this. It was hilarious. You'd also be surprised if you tuned in to 97.9 FM. It is now K-Love, a Christian radio station. The iconic rock station, The Loop, closed on the 10th of March and its final song was AC/DC's Highway to Hell. It's an Australian band, by the way. Seriously, look it up. 80 million passengers flew through O'Hare last year, making it the 6th busiest airport in the world, 3rd in America. But that doesn't concern the witches and wizards among us, as J.K. Rowling confirmed via Twitter that this door at the Damon Blue Line was indeed a door to Hogwarts. Senator Tammy Duckworth welcomed a new child and is the first US senator to give birth while in office. The Chicago Tribune unionized and are also leaving their iconic downtown building. The Tribune Tower will be developed into luxury condos and include a new skyscraper that, if built, would become the 2nd tallest in Chicago. On the topic of redevelopment, the old Cook County Hospital is being redeveloped into a mixed-use complex and a new proposal for the Chicago Hall was put forward, which looks kind of boring compared to the previous ideas. The Obama Presidential Center received zoning approval for its controversial Jackson Park location, and the Lincoln Yards, a possible Amazon H2Q location, wants to be the home for a new Chicago soccer team as Cubs owner Tom Ricketts is looking to buy. Newly proposed developments always receive criticism, but the addition on top of the Union Station reached a whole new level. The proposed glass hat for the Chicago landmark ignited both professional and unprofessional criticism, but here's the kicker. 3 months later, they submitted this redesign, which took a block just south of the station, which is a car park, and turned it into a tower with a public park. Why didn't you just lead with that design? Don't mess with our landmarks. Speaking of landmarks, the Uptown Theatre is finally going to be restored, a project which I'm very interested in. because the last time the Uptown Theatre was used was for a Transformers movie.
Hey, Lucas Flannery.
If science fiction is your thing, you'll be happy to know that Elon Musk won the contract for the O'Hare Tunnel. What did I say last year? Not going to hold my breath on that one. For July, well, actually the whole year, Chicago had numerous protests. Fueled by gun violence both locally and nationally, protests took place throughout the city, notably closing down the Dan Ryan Expressway as people were demanding action, not just words from their representatives. Which brings us to our next overall arcing story for the year. The Chicago mayoral race. The 45th mayor of Chicago would be elected next year, and it was announced that Rahm Emanuel would not seek re-election. There are currently 17 candidates on the ballot, which could change before February's election. Some might say, who cares about a mayoral election? But you have to understand, this is Chicago. And some say that this position is more powerful than the governor of Illinois. And the elections here are never normal. So far in this election alone, we've had celebrity appearances, leaked campaign videos of people who said they're not running, another daily, and one of the candidates handing out cash. Scripted reality TV doesn't get this good, and it's hard not to watch, but really it's a story for next year. The US Pizza Museum opened in Chicago, which upset several New Yorkers. Is there any better feeling? Navigating the bowels of Lower Wacker has become easier as Waze and the city have installed new GPS hotspots, although you have to turn your Bluetooth on for it to work, and even then, well, it's Lower Wacker Drive for a reason. If you're trying to get around downtown, I suggest divvying, as there's plenty of them lying around on the ground. The docked bike share program came under fire as a method for removing the bikes from the locked dock without paying was discovered. Soon, opportunistic riders were using the bikes as a one-time use and then dumping them. The problem was more widespread than Divvy admitted, and the vulnerability came about when they removed part of the mechanism to make it easier for customers to dock their bikes. No longer will you have to leave the city to go to Shake Shack or Culver's, as both of the franchises open locations within the city. Thank goodness none of the Culver's are located near me, which would be a health risk. Treasure Island announced it would be closing after 55 years, as this month the first of 2 Amazon Go stores opened downtown. Gone are those pesky personal interactions, as you simply scan in, take what you want, and leave. If that's too much personal interaction for you, Amazon Fresh will deliver straight to your door. Where are we at with that HQ? The prodigal son returns, as our love-hate relationship with Jeps and Malort will continue locally as they move the distilling and bottling to Pilsen, from Florida of all places. October also saw guilty verdict reached in the Jason Van Dyke case, although sentencing will not be carried out till next year, and residents of Rogers Park and police are on the lookout for a man who was involved in 2 unprovoked shootings. As we close out this year, the individual is still at large. Amazon chose 2 locations for its headquarters, and neither were Chicago. This whole theatrical process of groveling to a major corporation made a lot of people feel dirty and kind of happy that we didn't get it in the end. 3-time Stanley Cup coach Joe Quenneville was fired from the Blackhawks as the back office seeks new direction. Trust in Bowman? The longest running alderman Ed Burke's office were raided by the FBI. And Mercy Hospital was the scene of a fatal shooting which claimed the lives of a Chicago police officer, doctor, and pharmacy resident. Unfortunately, this tragedy was followed by another when 2 Chicago police officers were fatally struck by a metro train when pursuing a suspect. Tommy Hawk, the Black Hawk mascot, had his feathers ruffled by a fan at the United Center, and the Bears clinched their first NFC North title since 2010. Finishing off the regular season 12-4, they will play the Eagles in the new year. Winter runners and riders will rejoice as the lakefront trail separation completes and part of the Navy Pier flyover has opened. And we close the books on 2018 and open up for a whole new year of 2019 in Chicago. Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments. What were the good, the bad, and sometimes weird things that happened in Chicago this year for you? What were your highlights? If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe. There'll be more videos about Chicago coming this year.